Namaskar, good morning and Sat Shri Akal, Salam. Before I start, I chant an ancient sloka, very small, from the Upanishads, and then we start. After I do that, I would request all of you to spend a minute of silence for the martyr, General Rawat, who gave up his life recently, the CDS. So first let me start with the mantra. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukhabad Bhavet, Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. So can we just stand for a minute? Thank you very much. Jai Hind. So, first of all, thank you for inviting me here. Staff, the commandant, and all the people here. The subject is stress management, but before we go into that, I would like to give you a general idea of why and how stress comes and why and how it can be managed. I know you're all people in the armed forces. Your way of life has many commonalities with ours, but there are some distinct points which are different for you, which are not like us. So I would like to start with an ancient scripture that has come down to us, the Bhagavad Gita. Why I'm doing this is because this is not the normal satsang when we sit down and talk to. There are some satsangis also come here, discuss how to meditate, how to, and so on. Here, in this context, the Bhagavad Gita is an excellent text to follow. Why? The wonderful wisdom that has been imparted by Krishna to Arjuna in this text has not been done in an ashram, sitting under a tree, surrounded by silent disciples. It's been done in the midst of a battlefield, the Kurukshetra. I'm not saying that we all don't face a battlefield. Life itself is kind of a battlefield. But in your case, specifically, you actually are many times in the battlefield, apart from the battlefield that we face in daily life. Therefore, the Gita is very relevant to you, to us, but also to you, especially. I'd also recommend that everybody gets a copy of the Gita and reads at some point. Need not be, I have not translated, so I don't have my, it's not a book promotion, you know what I mean. So, it's very interesting that there are 18 chapters in the Gita. And each chapter is called a yoga. Unlike usually when you say yoga, people think of only the Yoga Pradipika, Hatha Yoga Pradipika, standing on one's head and so on, which is also part of yoga, of course. But when the Gita says yoga, it's in a wider sense of the term. It's how to handle yourself and how to face the world. This is yoga, true yoga. So every chapter is called a yoga, starting from the first one, which is Arjuna Vishada Yoga. Yoga of Arjuna's insecurity, sorrow, indecisiveness, which he faces in the Kurukshetra battlefield. In fact, Arjuna doesn't want to carry on with the battle. He says, I think I should retire. And he doesn't say it, but it's like as if he's saying, I should take sannyas. There are all my relatives standing on the other side. What am I supposed to do? And the whole of the Gita, starting with Arjuna Vishada Yoga, believe me, all of us, not only in the battlefield when there is an actual war, which is for you, in daily life, all of us face this battle where we don't know how to go forward and prefer to say, okay, let's leave it and retire, go back. The whole teaching of the Gita, apart from the higher spiritual teachings, which are also included, is don't give up. Move forward. And for moving forward, you need a state of mind which is quiet, calm, and peaceful. Now, what you should remember is that I know the armed forces deal with arms, they go to battles, they have war, apart from the peace projects that you have. What I would like to remind you, you probably know it, is that this ancient country that we have has a lot of wisdom here. And we cannot allow anybody else to tamper with it. And you are the force which is in the front protecting this country from being in any way disturbed so that our rishis get time to think and move forward. So while the rishis and the sages and the religious people have their profession or their calling, which is to find the spiritual, it's you who protect us and keep us in peace so that we can do what is required. And if you go back and look, many of our avatars were warriors. They didn't preach violence, no. But they were warriors, including Mahatma Gandhi, who preached non-violence. He was at war with the British constantly. So it's not when you are trying to protect justice, when you're trying to protect your country, when you're trying to protect the treasures that we have in this ancient land, this war is a spiritual war. If you look back, as I said, many of the avatars were themselves involved in battle. Sri Rama is a warrior. But now, there was a time when there were born Kshatriyas. This is a new time when we should have made Kshatriyas, not born Kshatriyas, but people who have the instinct to fight for justice, to fight to protect the wisdom and the valuable treasures that are in this country. And that is where your contribution comes in. And naturally, like Arjuna, it is fraught with tension, it is fraught with dangers, confusion, conflict. And that's why the Gita starts with Arjuna Vishada Yoga, the yoga of Arjuna's indecisiveness, sorrow, pain. Now, there's another thing here. It's only when there is pain and sorrow of some kind that generally human beings begin to think that there may be some divine being somewhere. Till then, the great Guru Nanak Sahib had said, Dukh mein sumiran sab kare, sukh mein kare na koi. Everything is hunky-dory, everything is perfect. Nobody wants to think if there's anything beyond. We are busy with our happiness. But when this strikes, then we say, wake up, there's something beyond. So for us, for all humanity, sorrow need not be looked at as something to be avoided and run away from, because it provides valuable lessons to us. It teaches us how to move forward, what to do. Where did I go wrong that I am in this sorrow? What are the steps taken for me to move forward? These are the teachings that you get in the Gita. There are 18 chapters. Each one is called a yoga. The essence of the Gita has been defined by Vyasa himself at the end of each chapter of the Gita. Another favorite mission of mine is that Sanskrit should be introduced in universities and academies. Why? Because it is a root language in which all our texts were written. Not only religious texts. Aryabhata wrote in Sanskrit. Kalidasa wrote all his drama in Sanskrit. Adi Kavi Valmiki wrote the Ramayan in Sanskrit. Valmiki Ramayan. All the science and the Arthashastra of Chanakya was written in Sanskrit. So it's an important thing to learn this, even if you don't want to learn the grammar, because with all your tough routine and your day-to-day life, to study Sanskrit grammar, Swami Vivekananda confessed it to take him another lifetime. So it's not that, but at least Laghu Sanskrita, something in which you can understand roughly what is being said. If you go in and look at the scriptures in their original, you will find that a human being is defined by his character and by his profession in which he puts all his energy into, not even keeping one for himself. This is called sacrifice. Now, I was referring to the last sentence which occurs at every chapter of the Gita. It says, iti. That's why I referred to Sanskrit. I think you will understand it even if I don't translate. Because every language in India has 40% of Sanskrit in it. So let me quote first. I'm sure you will understand, but then we'll explain. Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Understood? This is the Bhagavad Gita. And what does it teach? Upanishads. Upanishads. Upanishads are the essence of the ancient jewels of wisdom that we have in this country. And what does the Upanishad teach? Brahma Vidyaya, the knowledge of the Supreme Being. Then, Yoga Shastra, it's also the practical techniques required to touch the core of your being. And Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade. So, when you say Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade, one sees also that from ancient times the value of dialogue has been appreciated. It's a samvad. Although most of the time Krishna keeps speaking in the Gita, Arjuna butts in here and there and says, wait a minute now. It doesn't use the same words. You said you should meditate and your mind should be like a flame of a lamp where there is no wind. He says, I cannot do it. It's not possible. So what do I do? But it's a samvad. It's a dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. If you want to see how important the dialogue is, the Upanishad is full of dialogues. So, you know what happens even in a war situation. When nothing else works, then we have a dialogue. We have a truce. We have a white flag. Then we discuss and try to sort it out. Dialogue is very important. I think much of the woes of humanity is because we cease to have a dialogue. Stop at some point. No, dialogue nahi. Ho gaya. No. The dialogue should continue not only in day-to-day life, but also to take you into the spiritual realm. I'll give you one example from the great Chandyoga Upanishad. Why I'm saying this? It's not as if you believe it is there and no. You investigate, you find out for yourself. This is the whole system of Indian philosophy. And in the Chandyoga Upanishad, a young boy who is the son of Uddalaka Aruni, the great rishi, goes to study the truth and comes back to understand the truth. The father says, have you understood? And he says, I think I have understood. He says, if you think you have understood, you probably not understood. So he says, go near that banyan tree there. There's a seed of the banyan tree fallen there. Bring the seed to me. So he brings it. He says, remove the peel. So he removes the peel. What do you see? Sir, I see the kernel inside. K-E-R-E-N-A-L. And remove that. What do you see? I see little black seeds inside. He says, take one of those seeds and open it. What do you see? He says, I see nothing. And the father says to the great Rishi says to the son, it is from this nothing that this whole banyan tree has come. Which means two things. Psychologically, is when the mind is still and silent, when it's almost become shunya. I don't like the word shunya. Buddhists used a lot of shunya. I would prefer to call it Purna with Shankaracharya. Adi Shankara, I mean. So it is from this. So therefore, for any inspiration, anything that is new will come when the mind is quiet and calm. It's almost equivalent to shunya. That's when it renews itself and brings out new ideas, new thoughts, new creative instincts, and so on and so forth. Now, Gita has 18 chapters. On the way coming in, I saw some golf links here. I don't know how many holes you have, 9 or 18. I'm not sure. So, there's a beautiful book, Bhagavad, in which Bhagavad has acted on golf. I think you should all read that. It's very interesting. It talks about the Gita actually. It's an old Hollywood movie. All who play golf know how much attention you need to hit the ball. Technique. It's not force, not brute force, technique. And if you can play golf alone, you don't even need a competition. And what is required is complete one-pointed attention till you reach the 18th hole. But there is a 19th watering hole, but we don't go there. So, this kind of perfect attention is required if one needs to go deep within the mind. This is called the attention generating thought, which is free the mind from everything except the inner. You will be surprised when you do that there is no tension, there is no agitation, and yet one works perfectly well. This is my experience. I am 72 now. I travel all over the world almost. I mean, now with this COVID I was down, but I was fully engaged on internet, on online talks. It's not as if I was sleeping. What gets me through this? What is the secret of the energy that I have? Why is it that I don't behave like a 72-year-old usually? Where there are no aches and pains. I can only tell you, of course, there is the grace of God, I can't deny that. But apart from that, it's a life of moderation. A life where Krishna says in the Gita, the golden rule, this yoga is not for him who eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much or sleeps too little, and so on. So, if there is moderation in life, I started practicing yoga at the age of 10. I'm still continuing. Today morning also I did in the guest house. And moderation in food. I am by choice a vegetarian. I won't say that everybody has to become a vegetarian to become a yogi, because I know Swami Vivekananda was not a vegetarian. So who else will you compare with? I am, because I think one can survive without causing harm to animals. So let me explain something else. In Kerala, where I come from, Trivandrum, I come from Kerala, we have a unarmed and also armed combat system called the Kalari Payattu. I spent 10, 11 years in a Kalari, CVN Kalari, one of the best Kalaris in Trivandrum. One thing that is taught to us, don't strike when you are agitated. Keep your emotions under control. Now believe me, when two people in a Kalari, what you call a Tara, face each other, it's a war zone, yes. But you cannot effectively do it if you are emotionally involved. Keep your emotions out of this. Do it as a technique. When you do it as a technique, it's perfect because emotions sometimes get mixed up with activity. We had a very good doctor, surgeon in Trivandrum, Dr. Pai. When his son had to have a surgery, he called some other surgeon. So we asked him, what happened, doctor? He said, look, I'm too emotionally involved with my son. I don't think the surgery will go well. It's not emotional, but clinical. So these are some things that we should keep in mind. That emotions have a place where they have a place, but when you are actually facing an enemy, I'm not talking about I'm talking about the mind enemy, then the action turns out to be better when you don't get too emotional about it. This is the secret of Karma Yoga. In Gita, after Sankhya Yoga, the third chapter is Karma Yoga, where Krishna says, perform your duties to perfection. The result anyhow cannot be decided by you. So why would you waste your energy thinking of what is going to happen afterwards? Put all your energy into what you're doing and then move forward. And don't get sentimental and emotional about it. Especially when you're in a place where you need to face something which is going to destroy you. Would I say that I am non-violent when somebody is going to enter my house and kill my family and say, no, I'm not going to do? No. That's the time when one needs to defend oneself. And when you defend, you don't hate the enemy. You do it because you need to defend yourself. This is possible. If this is practiced more, then prisoner of war camps also will be nice and kind. Well, we need to take prisoners, but it need not be like, I don't want to say that, like the German prisoner of war camps. So, is there a technique by which one daily practices, this is all theory, what I said just now, by which one can gradually come to a level of managing your stress? I would say, having considered all the points we discussed just now, if you need a practical, in yoga there are many practical ways by which you can actually control your stress. And if you practice daily, when the situation arises, you need 2 minutes to prepare yourself. And when you do that, your mind also becomes one-pointed and completely nice. Before I go there, I want to tell you another story from Swami Vivekananda's life. When he was in the US, once he saw some boys trying to shoot a floating duck in water with the gun. So he said, can I try? So they laughed. He said, yours looks different with a turban on his head. Indian come from abroad. He said, have you shot before? He said, no, never in my life. So he said, do you want to try? Yes. He took the gun and he held it. And 3 times he shot the duck, the rubber duck of course, in the water. Properly, exactly where it should be hit. So they said, no, you must have had some experience. He said, no, I didn't have any experience. Then how did you do that? He said, concentration, complete attention, not disturbed by anything on the side. And he also said, I held my breath when I pulled the trigger. Yogi, being able to do something which normally is expected of a shooter. So, why I'm trying to say this, the practice of yoga can be taken to daily life things also. It's not just for people who sit in the cave and meditate all their lives. I've also done that until Babaji kicked me out. But it is in daily life. So, to the question, is there something which one can practice by which one can keep our stress levels down, keep our mind quiet? Yes. One of the techniques which we have in my particular lineage, which is the Kriya Yoga lineage, is called the Hum-Saw technique. Of course, you need to practice every day before it becomes effective. And it's very simple. Basically, to sit down, close your eyes, and give complete attention to your breath. You see, the breath is the most important part of our life. From the time we are in the womb till finally, as they say in Gujarat, off ho gaya, till you're dead. It's the breath that is the most important. When the breath ceases to act, we are finished. And yet, being such an important thing, how important breath is was evident to us during the last 1.5 years of COVID. The lungs was where it affected, and people could not breathe. This was the time when I was almost every day on the internet teaching people how to breathe. 60% of the problems could have been avoided if one even knew how to breathe. But breath is such an unimportant thing because given to us like a gift, we don't give any attention to it. You can live without food for some time. You can live without water also for some time. Without breath, half a minute, it is so important. And yet, we give no attention to breath. How to breathe properly and how to give attention to the breath, and from there transfer your mind to a quiet state and take it to the core of your being. This is the whole subject of Kriya Yoga actually. I can't give you the whole Kriya Yoga like in this kind of sitting like this, but I'm going to give you a very simple exercise from it. Now, therefore, the yogis say, reserve some time to give attention to your breath. If anybody is doing Gayatri Japa, for instance, Sandhya Vandan, there is one chapter where you breathe, called in yoga Anulom Vilom. Breathe in on one side, breathe out to the other. So, it's very important. So, what happens is, now how did this science come about? When you're very agitated, if you quite watch your breath, you will find that your breathing pattern or rhythm is very agitated. When you're calm and quiet, listening to music, or whatever one does to become calm and quiet, how do we do this? You close your eyes, sit down in a quiet spot, close your eyes, and watch your breath. Now, how do you watch your breath? We have never had this experience. We will wonder, how do I watch my breath? Just as you watch something outside, turn your mind to the inner. As you breathe in, be aware of your breathing as you go in. Hold it for a while. The mind is now watching the breath. You see, the mind cannot stay in a vacuum. It's like nature. If it is not occupied with something, it could be a japa, it could be a smaran, it could be anything, then it's likely to run riot. You have to engage it. So one of the best internal engagements is the breath. When you breathe in, just watch me. This is a deep breathing. This is something which we have forgotten. Now when we say breathe, we do this. Yeah. In yogic terms, it's called ujjayi. Deep breathing. All the classical singers, music, they know this, how to do this, because then the sound comes from inside. It's as if your mouth is open, but it's closed. Suppose my mouth is open and I do. I'm doing the same thing with my mouth closed. Hold it as long as you're comfortable. Then exhale. In our practice, we exhale. This is something that I'm sharing a secret. It's okay now. Open your mouth slightly and breathe out saying, this happens naturally when you're tired and you're sitting down in a chair. You run and you say, ah. Yeah. So take a deep breath, mouth closed. Follow the breath. Give complete attention to the breath. Hold it there. Then exhale. While you're exhaling, give complete attention to the exhalation. Do this for 5 minutes. Don't even count. When you'll see that it's all settled down, because the mind has found an anchor which is not outside but inside and is moving in a rhythm, in a system. So 5 minutes or 10 minutes a day if you do, then in a situation that suddenly arises, you need just 2 minutes to just get ready for this. But you need to practice. As Patanjali says, Nairantarya Abhyasana, regular practice is essential. And those who are spiritually inclined will one day begin to love that state when there is an in-breath and out-breath, which you are completely aware of. We call it Hamsa because when we inhale in our minds, we chant Hum. And when we exhale, we chant Sa. So I think from theory to practice, I have done a little bit of work. Since we expect and we know that you are all disciplined officers who are protecting, defending this country. If you don't do that, we will go back to the stage. Where is real Nalanda? How was it at one time? Where is Takshashila? How did it go? Because at that time the rishis did not want to take up arms. And one more thing before I end. The greatest mantra in the Rig Veda is the Gayatri mantra. And who is the rishi of the Gayatri mantra? Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra was a Kshatriya who had also learned all the techniques of war. Drona, whose name Gurgaon is named. Not to mention the great Sikh gurus, Guru Gobind Singh, very spiritual man. He did pick up arms to defend the honor of this country. So, having said that, I think I will stop now. They say samapt. If we need to have an interaction for some time, I'm ready. Thank you very much for listening carefully to what I said. Namaskar.
We will now take questions from Ashoka and subsequently from VCC.
Swamiji, pranam. Before I come to my question proper, I'll recite a verse of Guru Gobind Singh, since you're the only speaker who mentioned briefly about Guru Nanak Dev and Guru Gobind Singh. देश युवा बर मोए है शुभ कर्मन से कब हूँ ना डरूं अरसो जब जाए लड़ूं निश्चय कर अपनी जीत करूं और हर सिख को यह लालच है उचो नाम तेरो उचरू जब औद की आद निदान बने तभी रण में जूझ मरूं.
Can you Gurbani? I can't follow much.
He's saying, basically he's saying देश युवा बर मोए शुभ कर्मन से कब हूँ ना डरूं, and finally he's saying when the time comes to such a pass, the अंत में रण में तभी मैं जूझ मरूं फॉर राइटियसनेस.
Say that again, sir.
सर स्वामी जब टाइम आए तो मैं रण में जूझ मरूं फॉर राइटियसनेस. सो दैट इज व्हाट गुरु गोविंद सिंह वाज सेइंग. We have been brought up in armed forces where recruits during their Kasam parade, they take oath on Bhagavad Gita, Guru Granth Sahib, Quran Sharif and Holy Bible. Even once Rafael landed in Ambala, Rafael aircraft from France, there also a Padri, a Maulvi, Panditji and Granthi was there. Now, now coming to my question proper, Swamiji, I realized after attending 7 months of military training in CDM, starting with the guest lectures by Faculty of Behavioral Sciences from Dr. Ganesh Rao, Indian Philosophy, to Professor Himanshu Rao on negotiation, I realized that probably Bhagavad Gita, Ramayan, and Mahabharata are really very good scriptures. Now, I do practice yoga and meditation daily, Swamiji. Now, coming to my question, Swamiji, there is a stress in my mind that after having attended 7 months of this training in CDM, I will not say indoctrination, but as I have been so impressed by this training that I, from Vikrant Singh, I want to change my identity to Vikrant Sharma or maybe Vikrant Nair and remove my Kada and wear Janevu. So how do you, Swamiji, at 45 years, if I have to do, how should I do without stress?
Sir, you don't have to do any of these things. Kada is a wonderful symbol. There is nothing wrong with the Kada. Nor do you need to take off your Kesh. What change is supposed to be internal. It's nothing to do with the externals. If you are dedicated to lead a religious life and if you feel that these are essential, I don't think you should stress yourself much on it, but try to change the mindset rather than the physical. Look, everybody calls me Sri M. Now I must explain this. What is Sri M? Now, is there anybody called Sri M? So, when I was born, we come from a 4th generation Pakhtun family who settled in Kerala in the service of the Maharajas of Travancore. Right. So when I was born, my parents named me Mumtaz Ali Khan. Only thing is at 19, due to the blessings of Sri Guru, when some Khans went to Bollywood, I went off to the Himalayas. Very different. So what happened to what is the mind change? See, and then, so the first letter is Ma, right? When I went to the Himalayas and when Babaji initiated me into the Natha Sampradaya, he gave me the name of Madhukar Nath. Very beautiful name. He always used to call me Madhu. Madhukar Nath, the first letter is Ma. But above all, I like to call myself, when people call me M, I like it because M is the first letter of the word Manushya in Sanskrit and Manav in Hindi. So I consider myself a Manav. So you're also a human being, a Manav. So external things don't matter. If that is what makes you feel good, carry on with it. Internally, the mind should accept everyone as Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina. Don't stress on this. You're wonderful, you look fine, and in military uniform you would be looking great. Why would you want to change that? Huh?
Jain, sir.
Sir.
Sir, a very basic question. India has got a huge repository of spiritual knowledge. However, it is seen that it is quite a lot intertwined with religion. Probably an extension of question asked by Colonel Vikrant. Do they both need to go together? Hinduism and our ancient spiritual knowledge, firstly. Secondly, in the military, we have been trained to be apolitical and irreligious. In this scenario, where do we draw the line? To what extent can we be religious? Can we demonstrate our religious affinities openly? Should we do it? Should we not do it? Does it link with our spiritual quest? Is there a dissonance? Is there a conflict? Your views on that.
Right. So my view is, if you study your own, you may not have much stuff to study about other religions. Suppose you are born into a particular religion, and you study this religion, in this case probably Hinduism. If you study it deeply, you will realize that it stresses more on internal matters than external procedure. It's not as if Hinduism is not rituals. People need rituals, I'm not saying against that also, but what I mean is, when you say, this word Hindu is of course an acquisition. We will call it Sanatan Dharma, let's say. The ancient teachings and culture which have been in this country for thousands of years. Right? Now, you need not, the greatest secret of this particular strand of Sanatana Dharma is it looks for the betterment of all humanity. It looks for, 2000 years ago the Rig Veda said something which why I value this culture so much is because it is wide and it allows you to inquire. So, the Rig Veda said, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vedanti. There is only one truth, but the wise call it by different names. Today, when I go to the Kumbh Mela or when I meet the sages, nobody differentiates me because I have come from a certain community. Now this must become the common thing. If Muslims read the Quran deeply enough, read the teachings deeply enough, there may be some things which were intended for the wartime of the ancient times of that time. Beyond that, if you go into the inner, you will find that there is nothing to be afraid of there. In the same way, if you go deep into your own religion, you will soon find that here religion is not defined by externals, but the internal worth of a human being. So, I think the most important thing should be religiosity rather than religiousness. You know what religiosity is? That is, to consider, Swami Vivekananda said something very nice. He said that socialism has failed in many parts of the world. But he said, I am also sometimes a socialist because I prefer half a loaf to no bread at all. Then he said something else. He said, I have a brand of socialism which I call Vedantic socialism. So somebody said, in England, what is this? He said, I personally, it is my understanding that in every human being there is a spark of the divine. No matter who he is, Amar, Akbar, Antony, every human being has a spark. He didn't say this, I am saying Amar, Akbar, Antony because of this movie. He said, the spark of the divine is in all human beings. Right, I accept that, he said. Since I accept that, according to me, all humans are equal because they all have the spark of the divine, and he called it Vedantic socialism. Other socialist systems have failed, we know that. So if we can just keep this in mind, go to the core. That's why I keep saying go to the core. Don't worry too much about the shells, especially in an order like this which you have. If everybody goes only to the surface, to the shell and not to the core, it can have dangerous consequences. Which is why they train you to be one. Give thought, food for thought, sir.
Sir, we also know that the ancient text which we have from Rig Veda, Upanishads, Tirukural, the Arthashastra, and also Sri Bhagavad Gita, and many more, they all teach us about leadership, they all teach us about warfare, administration, economy, and other such things. We in the army have taken certain inputs from the Western world, which we propagate and which we teach from very basis, that is from the academies, till now and further ahead. Do you really think that all these ancient texts have so much to give to us? And if we include them into our process of learning and our process of growing, at what stage? Should we infuse everything at the same stage? Like, every mind is growing, so we cannot have everything at the same stage. What is your view, sir?
I can't comment on if everything should be introduced or not, but I'm certain that if a little bit of understanding in these scriptures are possible, you might get much more than you normally would know. However, that doesn't mean that you should exclude the Western inputs that you have. Don't exclude them, because there is good practicality, usefulness and goodness in all things. You can't say only here. So I can't comment on that. But I think if we go a little more deeper, it will be a good idea study. Now, recently I have been appointed by, usually the Rashtrapati does this, I have been appointed as the Chancellor of the Maulana Abdul Kalam Urdu University. Chancellor only has to go for convocation, Vice Chancellor does all the work. Anyway, so one of the things I am trying to tell them is try your academic skills in translating the Ramayan, the Mahabharata, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, the Bhagavad, Granth Sahib. English translations are available, I know that. I have a whole volumes rather. Bible, Quran has already been translated into Urdu. All these books and some of the Buddhist scriptures into Urdu, because they have all academicians, they have all the facilities. Why shouldn't we do it? I was recently in UAE because they want to set up a wellness center in Abu Dhabi. And none other than the Crown Prince surprised me by saying that in Saudi Arabia, the Crown Prince has introduced Ramayan and Mahabharata into the academic curriculum. And I remember when some years ago, Sushma Swaraj said in the parliament that the Bhagavad Gita should be introduced in the academics, and there was such a furore. I don't know for what, but there was. So at least looking at what others are doing, we should also try to do. I agree with you. But don't exclude any other system. If you have to be all-inclusive, then you need to look at everything. And it helps, that's why I said it helps when you know a little Sanskrit, because then you go deep into it and understand. Of course, your work and your job is different, so you can't spend time looking at learning Sanskrit and so on. So get people who know about it and talk about it. Not only in religious texts, there are wonderful texts on judiciary. Chanakya's Arthashastra is an important text. Look into that. It's a good idea. But why we need also the Western inputs is because for years the West has been involved in warfare. I'm talking about the armed forces. And they do have an expertise in that. The weapon systems and various other things they have, till some years ago we did not have. Right? So, it's important.
Sir, I am Group Captain Gunashekaran. My question is regarding a shloka in Bhagavad Gita. I think it's in Sang Yoga, but I don't know. It talks about if you think about something deeply, it causes attachment, leads to desire, failing which you get into anger and frustration. But a lot of modern management and leadership techniques talk about being passionate about what you're doing, identify yourself with the cause, which implies attachment. Naturally, when you fail on something, you're really frustrated with either a subordinate, superiors, yourself. So these two, I mean, one is our way of philosophy which tells not to be attached, other is the modern techniques which tell you to be attached. Where do you think is the middle path or what do you think is appropriate?
Sir, there is some misunderstanding here, which is the Gita or any of the works on Karma Yoga do not say that you shouldn't be attached to what you're doing. The only thing is, don't get too attached to the results that happen. See, the basis of Karma Yoga, if you don't put your passion into something, you certainly cannot do anything. Nobody stops, not the Gita. There is so much passion in the way the yogis lived and tried to achieve the great. I don't think anyone has as much dedication and passion as they had. So it's not that. It's not to get attached to the results in the sense, if you put complete attention to what you're doing, generally the result would be good. Agreed. Sometimes it may not be. There may be things which are not in your hands, not under your control. It can go wrong. If you're attached to the result and if you're already in your mind glorified it, if it doesn't happen, then you sink to such depression. The teaching is do your work with complete passion. It's not that you shouldn't have passion. Passion need not be a bad word. Have passion for something. In fact, one of the higher level translations of passion would be bhakti and bhava. But bhava is important. But if it doesn't work out, suppose, don't get caught in that depression, but you keep thinking, oh, it didn't happen, there must be something wrong with me. So all they're trying to say is set it aside and put your passion into work and see what you can do next. Without passion, you cannot do a thing. It's not possible. Look, when I was 19, I ran away from home. Because I thought if I stay here, I'm in a cage. I felt like that. It was a golden cage, but I thought that cage is a cage, golden or wooden, right? I ran away. I couldn't have done that if I didn't have that passion to do it. Then I suffered a lot because of that. Penniless, walking in the Himalayas, sometimes losing faith in what I started out for. Terrible period of time. But I must say, I don't know whose blessings or what, I considered all failures to be stepping stones and didn't give up because I had passion. If I had given up at that point, everything would have been lost. Like Arjuna says in the Gita, I am neither here nor there. What am I supposed to do? So I'm just clarifying a little bit on this. Do have passion in whatever you do. If it doesn't work out, don't fall into, say, something must be wrong. Do the corrections and move forward with more passion. All who have succeeded, even in this world, have done because they had passion. And they didn't give up. You know this, that Edison tried 99 times and failed. 100th time the electric bulb was born. Today we don't know the value of it. You switch on and it comes, right? Because he didn't give up. And when at an interview he was asked, you must be having a lot of inspiration, sir, for all this. He said, I must really tell you the truth. It is 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration. But that 1% inspiration was so important that even after 99 failures, it did not let him give up.
Sir Jahan, my question is related to how to get the things to the younger generation, especially our children. I'm not talking about national level, what government should do. What should I do as a parent? Because as we grow old, we look at the same thing with a different perspective. I'll tell you an example. Throughout my childhood, I never liked Vibhishan.
Never liked?
Vibhishan, Ravan's brother, Vibhishan. We always used to say, Ghar ka bedi lanka dhai. But immediately after I became a commanding officer, Vibhishan was one of my favorite characters in Ramayan. Because now, as a commanding officer, I wanted Vibhishan all around. Because if I go wrong, somebody should have the courage to tell me that I am wrong.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Whether I accept that advice or not is a different thing.
Yes.
At least I should have somebody who is not a yes man, who should have the courage to tell boss you are doing wrong.
Right.
That transformation came after 40 years only because I had the background knowledge of my childhood, who Vibhishan was and what it did. Today, at the age of 35, 40, when our children go to corporate and they are introduced to such concept, there is a cognitive dissonance. Now they don't know.
Yes.
So as a parent, how should I get the basics and the background so that there is some kind of knowledge with them, whether they implement, whether they follow, it's a different thing. At least something should be there. After 20 years, when the different concept is introduced, at least they can correlate. I am seeking your advice purely as a parent.
Yes, yes. So, one thing I need to tell you is, apart from introducing them to such concepts at an young age, children are very sensitive and intelligent. Okay? So, more than what you teach them, they will imitate what you do. Very important to note. They are very intelligent. They may not argue with you, but they say, this is what he's saying, but he's not doing this. Okay? So, if you lead your life and show them what you are actually doing, the child will also grow up doing that. There should not be a dichotomy in one's life, especially in relation to the kids, children, and also to the wife. People come to me and say that I'm going to get married. Till now I was free. I said, no, stop. If you say till now I was free and now you are saying, and then you are already started a problem. Because you are saying, now I am bound. How do you start with that? A married life? No, can't. So always, I'm a married man, I know. And that too, I'm married to a child from the armed forces. It's tough. But I tell them, when you start your life, don't start with the idea that you are always right. You may be wrong somewhere. The other person could be right. If that much you start with, then things have a chance of working out. I'm just saying this in context. So, as far as children are concerned, any concept like Vibhishana, for instance, or Hanuman, for instance, different dimension. If you can get the children to know about it. The problem is, nowadays there is one section of youngsters who would not listen or talk or read anything to do with religion. This is also there on one side. But they read Harry Potter. So, introduce some of these texts, show them that you are actually, there are very many interesting things here, read it. Sometimes one wonders if Harry Potter copied a little bit. I don't know. So, then they get interested. When they get interested, the concepts which you missed, which you now regret that you missed, introduce it to them gently and no force. This generation is quite different. Cannot force them. You need, which is okay.
Morning, sir. So my question is regarding the stress management. As you have brought out, doing yoga in the morning is a very effective way of reducing the stress. But in today's world, stress has become part of our lives. And almost around 24 hours we remain under stress for meeting the deadlines, reaching a place in time, small things like children's education, medical issues, financial problems. So in addition to doing this yoga and meditation for half an hour in the morning, is there any other way of reducing this 24 hours stress that we remain throughout in our day, sir?
Sir, one thing is stress happens when basically when we are doing something we are seriously really not interested in. You know, like our career we are interested in, but like education of the child, you have to do it, but it's not as if it's your calling, right? So stress is generated. Now, I would say we should not use the word stress. That word stress itself builds stress. You should take it as a challenge. Change the word, nomenclature. Of course, the 10 minutes of meditation yoga helps. I'm not saying it doesn't, it's a great thing. But apart from that, don't look at stress with that word which has been implanted in our minds that this is stress. Take it as a challenge. All these things are there in life, you cannot escape. We are not sitting in the mountains meditating all the time. This will come up. So take it as a challenge, not as that word stress. Also this word depression. People take the word so seriously that they end up being depressed. I'm saying, can we look at it not as one whole, but as different situations which are occurring and solve them as they come, rather than putting them all together in one shell and saying, no, I'm in stress. I think if you do that, you might. So what will happen? Even if you call it stress, you'll get one small stress, then another small stress. Then you deal with it individually, not psychologically make it into one thing which gets into our mind and keeps affecting us all the time. I'm saying this, you think I don't have problems. I also have. I face all kinds of people. Sometimes I go and speak somewhere and the people nobody is nowadays a human being. Everybody is this wing or that wing. So, all have wings. But what to do? I have to handle it. But I don't consider it as stress. You know what I mean? If I can do that, I think you can do it too. I take it as a challenge. Okay, let's see what happens. We'll talk. We'll see what we can work out. I also have children, so this thing about education, everything I have passed through. Believe me, after a while all these things will go from your life because they'll all grow up, they'll be doing, then you'll be fine. But nobody is 100% fine in this world. Nobody. We think somebody's got everything that they want and that they are living in great glory. They can't sleep at night. I know people. We have, compared to them, we don't have much stress actually. There are people, I know, that person is not there anymore, to come out at night and look up to see if there are any helicopters coming from across the border. Could not sleep. So we need to handle it as they come. There is no magic solution or panacea for this. But main thing is, don't give up and don't clash.
Any question from the ladies before we shift to BCC?
Now there I am in trouble. Yes?
Right, so we'll shift to BCC. BCC, you can start.
Sir, my question is, sir, how do I convince my kid to take Sanskrit as a foreign language, sir?
So what did you say, sir? I didn't hear you. How will I
convince my kid to take Sanskrit because he considers it as a foreign language, and when he goes to Duolingo, he says, I can't find Sanskrit there, sir. Through your thing, sir, the pedestal where you have reached at this stage, as you have been emphasizing on deep learning of Sanskrit, sir, how can we institutionalize Sanskrit as a language wherein probably when you were going through your answer, sir, I found it that Thor and all, I also got the same feeling that the same thing we did when we saw Ramayan. Some Brahmastra was played and it caused havoc. And the same thing he is putting his mallet and all, it is reaching through the space. So either we are lacking in the technology or we have failed in as an institution, sir, to bring out Sanskrit as a language.
I understand your genuine concern, and I think many people should have this genuine concern. However, if you ask me, I will tell you from my experience. The main reason why people don't take up Sanskrit, one is they think it is a religious denominational language. One. Two, the Sanskrit grammar is so tough that people don't take it up because they give up very easily. Apart from German grammar, I think the toughest grammar is Sanskrit. So that way you cannot really introduce Sanskrit. So I'll tell you what we do. We have a school, it's a boarding school run by the Satsang Foundation. It's almost like a Shanti Niketan. A lot of outdoor classes, we have a lot of land with trees and so on, not as much as you have probably here, but big trees and water bodies and so on. And what we have done is to introduce what is called conversational Sanskrit. I had to interview lots of people because most of them were people who would traditionally teach Sanskrit. I wanted someone who can teach conversational Sanskrit. And it's not compulsory, we kept it optional. But believe me, 80% of the children, including people belonging to strictly, in brackets, not the Hindu system of thought, have taken up the study of Sanskrit because they love the way it is spoken. And they build and they make their own one-act plays and everything in Sanskrit. It's very interesting to see. This school ours is called, I'm not asking you to send your kid there, but the People Grow School. People meaning the people tree. Ashwatha Vanam Vidyalaya in English is People Grow School. So it's a residential school, boys and girls are together. We have no uniform. And it's of course a vegetarian campus, so we don't get many students. And it's an ISC school from 4 to 12th, plus 2, with boarding, no day scholars. We have found this teaching of conversational Sanskrit very easy to introduce among children because they also read Kalidasa and various other texts which are actually very simple. You don't need much grammar to read Kalidasa. And there is nothing religious there. It's drama. And I must also suggest that there is an organization in India called Sanskrit Bharati, which teaches conversational Sanskrit. These are some options that you have. But basically the student must be interested, otherwise none of this will work. There is a village in Shimoga where everybody talks Sanskrit, milk vendor, vegetable seller, and some of them are not even Hindus. Because it's a beautiful language if you learn how to speak. So this is the way one can introduce. Why I want Sanskrit is because then you can see in original what is there, and you may like it, you don't like it, that's up to you. So thank you very much. Namaskar. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
On behalf of the officiating commandant and all of us here at the college, let me extend a deep gratitude and appreciation to you, sir. I would now request all of you to join me in giving Sri M a standing ovation.